Good afternoon to the commissioners.
How are you this afternoon?
I'm very well, Chief Justice. Thank you very much. And how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I've greeted you on behalf of all the commissioners, and all the commissioners are fine too.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
We thank you for availing yourself to be considered for appointment to the Eastern Cape Division. But before I ask you questions, Judge President Lekhodi wishes to say something.
Well, it's a declaration, Commissioners. I had the opportunity to interview this candidate for the position of a regional court president, and I also had the opportunity to prepare a memo to the Minister for appointment. So in the event I happen to vote for her, if that is what is going to happen, I just thought I needed to disclose that. And by the way, she is blessed with a good voice.
Thank you. Ms. Noncembu, I'm going to ask you certain questions, and once I'm done, I'll ask the Judge President to put his questions to you, and the Premier, and thereafter any other commissioners who might wish to do so. I will ask you to try your best to give crisp answers to the questions. I'm confident that the commissioners who will ask you questions will also ask you crisp questions. Thank you. You hold 2 degrees, is that correct? BA Law and LLB?
That's correct, Chief Justice.
Both of which you obtained from the University of the Western Cape?
That is correct, yes.
And respectively, you got them 1996 and 2007?
That's correct, Chief Justice, yes.
You worked as a prosecutor for some time, and then you were appointed as a magistrate?
That is indeed correct.
Did you start off as a district magistrate?
That is correct, yes.
And you ended up in the regional court?
That is correct, Chief Justice, yes.
For how many years were you a district court magistrate, and how many years have you been a regional court magistrate?
I was a district court magistrate for 5 years, Chief Justice, and I was a regional court magistrate for about 5 years.
Yes.
Yes.
When you were appointed as a district court magistrate, was that in 2005?
That is correct, Chief Justice. Yes, it was in 2005.
Yes. When you were a district court magistrate, did you do civil matters?
As a matter of fact, I did, Chief Justice, yes.
So you did both civil and criminal
law, yes, as well as family law, yes.
Yes. And then as a regional court magistrate, you did mostly criminal matters, but you have done some civil matters as well?
I did civil as well, Chief Justice. I think the last 2 years as a regional magistrate, I was doing civil exclusively.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you have also acted in the High Court, is that right?
That is correct, Chief Justice, yes.
For how long have you acted in terms of months, weeks, if you put them together?
Overall, I've acted for 32 weeks.
About 32 weeks.
That's correct, Chief Justice.
And
yes.
When you acted as a judge, did you sit in both criminal courts and civil courts?
That is correct, Chief Justice, yes.
And of the period that you have spent as an acting judge, how much, are you able to say how much of that could have been taken up by civil work? How much of that could have been taken up by criminal work?
Actually,
or are you not able to say?
Actually, I think I can say 80 to 90% was taken up by civil work, Chief Justice. And
yes.
10 to 20% was criminal work.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course, criminal work, you have had a lot of experience in it in regional court. Is that correct?
That is correct, indeed.
Yes. And did you sit in motion court as well when you were an acting judge in the High Court?
Yes, I did, Chief Justice.
And did both unopposed applications and opposed applications?
That is correct, indeed, yes.
Yes. And are you able to indicate about maybe how many weeks you might have used to do motion court out of the 30 or so weeks?
If I may, I know
Is it easy to say?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
it will be, Chief Justice. I know in Gauteng, I think 2, 3 or 4 weeks I did motion court. In the Eastern Cape, I think 1 or 2 weeks. In Northwest, I cannot say in terms of weeks because
Yeah.
we basically do everything throughout.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. How did you find motion court in the High Court?
And it's in terms of the volume in particular, it's quite intense. However, I think I also had the advantage that, especially when I did a civil court, motion court I would start specifically in the district court, that was at a time when the regional court did not have civil jurisdiction. And where I was working, which was in Durban at the time, the civil section was a very busy division. So at least one was able then to juggle and to manage, the huge motion court roles. So yes, but then now, because especially in the High Court, it's not only the volume, also the complexity of the matters that you deal with. But with the, I think I was able to manage it eventually. At first, it was a bit tricky, I won't lie. But then with time and also, guidance from colleagues, I think I managed it quite effectively in the end, Chief Justice says.
Well, you have been within the judiciary for about, what, 15 years?
That is correct, yes. That is correct,
Yes,
Justice,
at
yes.
different levels.
That is correct indeed.
Yes. About how many written judgments do you have? How many judgments have you written that you have handed down?
During my acting period,
Yeah, your acting period as an acting judge.
as an acting judge, I think about 38, if I'm
About
not...
38.
That is correct, yes.
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 Do you remember about many have gone on appeal?
I am aware of one where I granted leave to appeal. Yes, there is one that has gone on appeal. A second one, which is a very recent one, that I also granted leave to appeal. Those are the only 2 that I'm aware of. The others,
Yes.
leave to appeal was refused, yes.
Yes. And have you sat in full bench appeals in the High Court?
Yes, I have, Chief Justice.
And how have you found sitting in full bench appeals with other colleagues?
It's I'm not sure how to put it, but look, the aspect of, it's different from what I'm used to, if I were to put it that way, but good, because sometimes you may find that, especially during the conferences and the deliberations, that, some other thing that you may have missed, you are able to, to see.
Hang on 1 second. Okay, please continue. Just start your answer afresh.
Oh, thank you, Chief Justice. I was saying it's different from what I'm used to, coming from the lower courts. But the good thing about it is that there's, more eyes to every matter. At times, something that you may have, missed. So during the deliberations and the conferences, you are able to engage with colleagues. And so with those discussions, and it also helps you to grow. And yes, you are able to see things. And also the aspect of, sometimes being persuaded, where you were seeing things on a different view. If I were to make a quick example, Chief Justice, recently I was sitting in a full bench appeal. So there was an issue in as far as the costs were concerned, and we were on, opposite ends. But after the discussions and all of that, I was able to be persuaded by a colleague to see the view at the end as to which direction to go in as far as concerns, and at the end we're able to agree on what order to make. So those kinds of things, I think they're quite crucial and important in as far as, the advantages of being in a full bench, which you do not ordinarily get, when you're sitting alone or when you're sitting with only just the one judge. Yes.
Yes. And When you have been sitting on appeal and you had to deal with a decision that had been taken by lower court exercising a discretion, what would be your approach in terms of under what circumstances you can set aside a decision taken in the exercise of a discretion sitting on appeal?
Thank you, Chief Justice. The only time you can interfere with such a decision is where the discretion was, where either the judicial officer in the lower court did not exercise their discretion to start off with, or where it was not exercised properly to such an extent that it led to a vitiation of the proceedings. So those would be, otherwise you do not have a leeway to simply set aside a matter where the lower court judicial officer was exercising their discretion. It must be such that their discretion was not properly exercised, or they misdirected themselves, or it was exercised in such a manner that it led to, a failure of justice. And only under those circumstances then can you interfere with such a decision.
And under what circumstances may you, sitting on appeal, set aside factual findings of the lower court, trial court?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Chief Justice?
When you are sitting on appeal,
yes,
in a matter and you are called upon to set aside factual findings made by a trial court, under what circumstances may you do that?
Okay. The starting point, the Chief Justice, is that the trial court obviously is in a best position when it comes to factual findings in the matter, because they are sitting there, they see the witnesses, they're able to make, for example, issues of credibility and also issues of demeanor, which you as the appeal court are not in a position to see and to be able to determine. So the only time, therefore, you can set aside factual findings of a trial court is where it is clear that the trial court seriously misdirected itself in coming to that conclusion. So those would be the circumstances then under which you would set aside those factual findings.
Thank you. I will now give the Judge President the opportunity to put questions to you. Judge
Thank
President.
you. Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Ms. Noncembu.
Good afternoon, JB.
The world out there may be interested to know how you got to be in the Eastern Cape, and I think I need to tell everyone. You were recommended by President Maya and Judge President Mlambo. That's how you got to be there. I'm just placing that on record. You have acted in other divisions more than you have in the Eastern Cape, not so?
That is correct, JP.
You've not acted at all at Gqeberha.
No, I have not. No.
It behooves me to place it on record that two Gqeberha-based senior judges, including the DJP, and with whom you sat in appeals at Bishop, sing your praises.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, JP.
Now, the GCB has expressed concern that you've not acted long enough to demonstrate your ability or for them to make a proper assessment of your suitability. Would you classify that as a fair comment?
I would say, JP, they base that on having looked at my acting period specifically in the Eastern Cape. But if you combine my acting period, as I already indicated earlier, I've acted overall for a period of 32 weeks.
Yes.
Yes. So, yes, the Eastern Cape Bar Council perhaps may not have had an opportunity, but I think my judgment would speak more to, my abilities as a judge. But I've acted in other divisions as I've indicated, JP, yes.
Thank you. Nadel criticizes you for remaining a member of a political organization whilst a judicial officer. Is this criticism borne out by the application form?
No, JP, it is not.
In that form, you merely said, I was a member of this particular organization in 1991.
That is correct.
I see.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Judge President. Commissioner Nochesi?
But I'm just following
Oh,
up
I'm
on-
sorry.
Oh,
Premier.
Thank you very much.
I think Commissioner Nochesi, you said you wanted to follow up, Commissioner Nochesi. I'll give you a chance later. Let the Premier go ahead.
That follow-up might be serious. Thank you very much, CJ. Good afternoon, Ms. Noncembu.
Good afternoon, good afternoon.
Well,
Yeah.
again, I think I'm generally covered, but I just wanted to check, probably just overall, that do you think our constitution requires an overall in the light of changes in the country? And why, if you think so?
On the overall, Premier, I think we have a very good constitution. I do not think it needs an overall. The biggest challenge is in the implementation of what is contained there is what happens on the ground, especially the laws that are there to give, a meat to the constitution, and in ensuring that those are adhered to. But on its own, I think our constitution, yes, there may be challenges here and there, but overall, I think we have, in fact, one of the best constitutions in the world. I wouldn't say it needs an overall.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier. Then I'll give Commissioner Nochesi
It's just a
the
follow-up.
chance to ask.
I was not going to ask a question, but I have to here. In respect of your membership to that political organization, did you tell when you resigned?
No, I did not. But if I may just explain, because my understanding, I was a member for 1 year, and I had joined. That was in 1991 after I had passed matric, because I was at that year not studying. So I was at home and I wanted to be involved in my community. So I was a card-carrying member because I joined as I was actively involved. That was a yearly membership. I only joined for that year, and even my involvement ended in that year because the following year I went to university. I was never involved in politics altogether since then.
The last tip was a follow-up on this. You see, the point is, would you criticize Nadel for reflecting that in terms of your answer, you say, I was in this political organization. You don't say, I stopped in this year. So if you say from 1991 you've been there, is it wrong to say you've been in that political organization?
Now,
Why you can't take a responsibility?
Now,
Thank you.
in that regard, Commissioner, I will accept that. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to understand what you accept and what you don't accept. The membership of the political organization you're talking about, do you know whether a member's membership needs to be renewed after every year or not, or once you have been a member, you don't cease to be a member until you resign? Do you know what the position is?
Thank you, Chief Justice. At least at the time, I'm not aware what's the position now. At the time, the membership was renewable annually. So to me, when the year ended, without me having renewed, then my membership terminated.
Yes, but was that your understanding and continues to be your understanding, or you are not sure what the position was?
That was my understanding at the time, Chief Justice.
Okay, all right. JP?
Thank you for indulging me. CJ, paragraph 8 of the questionnaire is very simple. It says, please furnish particulars of your membership of any political organization, past and present. Then name of organization, position held, period, and then it mentions the name of the organization, and then it also mentions that she was a member, and then period, 1991. I'm just placing that on record.
Yeah.
Because context is everything.
But sorry, it doesn't say I was a member. It says it's a member. Look, maybe it's an arguable point, but
Hang on,
no, my point is
Commissioner Nochesi, I haven't allowed you to Okay, all right. But anyway, we have heard what you are saying. But from what the JP has read, it looks like the candidate's indication in the form was that she was a member during a particular year, if my understanding is
After
correct.
which it lapsed.
Yes. Okay, all right.
And so which that
Commissioner-
was in that form.
Commissioner Nyambi?
Thank you, CJ. Afternoon, Mr. Gqeberha.
Afternoon, Commissioner.
The JP, CJ, and Premier covered all the other questions. I was worried when Noncembu was jumping the Premier. I thought there's coup in front of judges. No, it's one question. It's about the objection by Mr. G.R.M. Mokaka, alleging that you are biased. Maybe if you can make us to be comfortable about these allegations so that we understand, and it's going to assist us when we are having our sessions discussing your issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me start first by how the matter came to be before me. Mr. Mukoka is accused number 1 in a matter that involves 12 accused persons. Now, what happened in the matter is that when I arrived in the Northwest, the matter was already on our roll. The matter had been long outstanding on the roll. In fact, the resident magistrate, it's in Mohwase Regional Court, the resident magistrate there had recused himself because there were certain complaints that were brought against him by Mr. Mukoka. So I allocated a regional magistrate, I think about 2 regional magistrates to deal with the matter, but there were a number of problems that arose. But what was my main concern with the matter was that the matter had been very long outstanding on our roll, and this caused by the fact that, firstly, because there were 12 accused persons, at times it would be the accused persons, either one would be in court, others would not be in court, and changing attorneys from time to time. Sometimes it would be the state. So realizing what was happening, I therefore, in my capacity as the regional court president, decided, because one of the things I realized is that there seemed to be problems, and the other problem was that having different magistrates dealing with the matter, especially pre-trial at that stage, it created problems and further delays because new things come up every time the matter is on the roll. So I took it upon myself, as in my capacity as the regional court president, to case manage the matter up until the pre-trial, in fact, up until it was trial ready. And that is what even I placed on record. I said, I will case manage the matter until it is trial ready, at which point I will then allocate a magistrate to deal with the trial, because having dealt with the pre-trial conference, it would therefore, it may have, things come up in the process, so I would not be in a position to deal with the trial. And that is how then I got to be involved in dealing with the matter. There is therefore no merit whatsoever to any allegations that I am biased in the matter. I know there was an application that was made for the staying of proceedings, which I dealt with, and I dismissed the application. I understand he took the matter on review, of which, in fact, I did explain that was his right to do so. But at all stages, I knew, and he knows it because I placed it on record, that I was not going to deal with the trial. My job in the matter was to case manage the matter, as is a requirement when you are a judicial leader, in terms of the norms and standards, and seeing that the matter was not reaching any speedy finalization.
Thanks for the explanation. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Singh?
No, thank you, Chief Justice. Commissioner Nyambi, because I think we come from the same environment, has covered the question of the Mokoka, because we've been reading about that.
Thank
you. And I think the JP has covered the issue about the extreme mobility. Good afternoon, by the way, sorry. About your extreme mobility from Durban to Northwest and then Eastern Cape. But I have one question on reserve judgments. And I note that JP has given us an update this morning. All the judgments that are listed here have been delivered. But I do note that some of them have gone way over the 3-month period, some up to 6 months. Can you just explain why that happened in those instances?
Yeah,
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner. What had happened, and you would note that most of those, they come from the Northwest Division. What had happened is that at the time, after I had acted in the Northwest, I went back to my office. And the unfortunate thing that happened is that I would email my judgments to my secretary, and then he would hand them over to the DJP, who would then sign them on my behalf and have them handed down by another judge, an available judge. It appeared, in fact, I learned this much later. The secretary resigned in February. And in fact, when I'd spoken to her, she had forwarded my judgments and to the DJP. I learned, in fact, much later that some of the judgments were never forwarded. And in fact, much to my surprise, how I found out, one of the matters that I got a call from the JP in Gauteng saying my name is on the list of outstanding judgments. And that came as quite a surprise to me because at that time I did not have any judgment that was outstanding in the Northwest Province. But yes, that's how that came about. But I have to acknowledge, Commissioner, that perhaps also at first, one was not quite as, in the managing, especially with the volume of the work in the High Court. So one was still finding her way. But I was able to, with time and with assistance, and I've such that all the judgments, for instance, that were outstanding at the time that I completed my application have since long been handed down.
So these were exceptions rather than the rule, your normal rule.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. Commissioner Makwanisha.
No, thank you, Chief Justice. My question was covered by Commissioner Singh.
Thank you very much. I'll go to the commissioners attending virtually. Is there any commissioner who has a question for the candidate?
Chief Justice.
Yes, Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Noncembu. The case I wanted to talk to you about is Jan Oosthuizen and Seuns versus Van Deventer Nomine Officio. It's the one where one of the points that was raised was in connection with whether a trust has the protection in terms of the National Credit Act or not. So if you would like to refer to it, it's paragraph 6 of the bundle, but I'll be very quick. The basic question is this, there was a point raised on constitutionality because it's a trust that had 3 trustees, and accordingly, you summarize it in paragraph 7 of the judgment. It just says that it's therefore a juristic person. You didn't really want to entertain the constitutionality challenge there, and you say it's because it was pleaded basically. But the question is this, isn't there an arbitrariness between a trust with 2 trustees and 3 trustees? Let's say you have a trust with 3 trustees, it's a juristic person, and 1 trustee passes away, for example. Then you have a situation where you had the protection, didn't have the protection of the Act, suddenly you do have the protection of an Act. So my question is just this, was that not a point which should have been looked at in a bit more seriousness with the court?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. The reason why I did not go into detail on the aspect of the constitutionality of the issue that was raised is that when a constitutional issue is raised in a matter, there has to be a notice that has to be given beforehand. It cannot only be raised in argument at that stage, and therefore it was not proper before me. But because I addressed it, because it was raised in argument, but because it was not an issue that I could adjudicate upon, because firstly, there was no notice given to say that they are raising a constitutional issue, and secondly, it was not pleaded on the papers, and therefore that is how I dealt with it in that matter. I mentioned it because it was mentioned in as far as the argument was concerned, and that was the only time that it was raised.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I take it that the silence means there are no other commissioners who wish to put a question attending virtually.
I have no questions. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Breitenbach. Thank you, Commissioner Pillay.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Ms. Noncembu.
Good afternoon.
Can I just say that I really enjoyed reading your judgments. I thought they were very well structured and very well reasoned. all except obviously the one with the typographical errors, which I'm sure you recognize. There is one difficulty that I have, though, and that's in your judgment, the Molefe judgment, Molefe versus the Minister of Police. The judgment begins on page 77.
Okay. In the bundle before me, I'm not sure if it's numbered.
It's paginated at the bottom of the bundle. Okay, perhaps if you go to paragraph 10 of the Molefe judgment.
No, not yet. Oh, sorry, look. That's good. Thank you. Paragraph 10.
Yes, paragraph 10 of the judgment. And so this is the claim for damages arising out of unlawful arrest and detention, right?
That is correct.
And at this point of the judgment, you're considering the various factors in order to decide what's an appropriate damages quantum, right? And I noticed in paragraph 10 of your judgment that until this point, you take into account all valid factors, and then you reach paragraph 10, and you say the following: this could not be more true, especially at a time such as this for our country, when there are so many demands on the public purse, and as such, and as correctly contended by counsel for the defense, most of which have been added by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I just wanted to understand from you, do you believe that this is a valid factor to be taken into account? Increased demands on the public purse brought on by the COVID pandemic?
I think, Commissioner, if I were to say in looking at the judgment, not so much, but that I was mentioning, because at the end of the day, when you're considering damages, the main factor is that the award you make is meant to be a solace. So nothing much, nothing less. It's not about, so that was just, in a way, if I were to say, so I'm looking for the correct English word for that.
I think I appreciate your answer. It's just a word of caution. Obviously, if you're looking for basis for appeal, this is the kind of stuff you pick up. Although I accept the answer that ultimately it really didn't feature in your assessment of the damages quantum.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't have any further hands. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Baloyi?
If I may, as the sweeper, just
Oh.
Yes, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Yes, among the comments that have been made, and I see that Commissioner Pillay has made a comment about the typo. There's a comment from one of the commenting parties that they do commend your judgments, but express a concern that you don't pay particular care to your judgments, and so you end up with these kind of errors. Can you just perhaps, just to allay any concern, speak to your process of your editing process until you deliver the judgment?
Thank you, Commissioner. Generally, well, I type my own judgments, and obviously, time permitting, most of the time I would refer it to the researcher to go through and all of that, and it comes back to me, and I would go through it again to check any typos and all of that, and I double check before I have it handed down. I am generally quite meticulous when it comes to such issues. However, the one I know they refer to, I think it was my surname that is spelled incorrectly, and it's it's unfortunate. I would not lie. How that could have slipped through, I am not sure. It was just, it's something that I am very cautious in looking at too. I must mention that also, perhaps for the JP as well, this one, that one other challenge, for instance, I experienced specifically in that I will mention, because I recall having sent, because, you know, with the norms and standards and the times you want to deliver your judgments expeditiously, you find that, you know, the researcher has got other duties as well that he is doing. I remember I took the matter up with the DJP because I sent a judgment and I'm told the researcher is not available. He will only look at, so it creates, you know, certain problems. I had to raise it to say that, but, you know, because you have time within which to deliver a judgment, because judgment delayed justice delayed is justice denied. So that also at times could have played a part, but I am generally quite attentive to make sure. In fact, it's noteworthy that it would be my surname. The one thing I'm very particular about being spelled correctly, that would be, you know, spelled incorrectly in my own judgment.
Okay, thank you for that. And then lastly, this is an issue that was canvassed with you, but I think in fairness to you, we should also put this so that you clarify it. This was about your membership of any political party, and there was that earlier conversation about 1991, right?
Yes.
Now, in the comments, the comment is why you did not indicate that you were a member of a political party during 2005 onwards, when she became a judicial officer. Maybe just clear that once you were appointed, were you a member of a political party? Did you continue?
Thank you, Commissioner. I was not a member of any political party from the time I started working as a prosecutor in 1999. I was only a member of a political party in 1991, and that was it. Beyond that, I was never a member of any political party.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Slim.
Thank you, CJ. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
I would just like you to allay my concern linked to what Commissioner, now I forgot her name, the Commissioner that just spoke before me, Baloyi, thank you.
Commissioner Baloyi.
Commissioner Baloyi, what she asked you concerning some of the comments that was made, that you're not a stickler for detail, and your response to that. Earlier on during the interviews, when Commissioner Singh asked you about the fact that some of your judgments have taken long to be delivered, you indicated that you were not aware that a secretary to whom you sent the judgment was, well, resigned. Which kind of shows to me that you are not very attentive to such issues. Why didn't you follow up when you didn't get any recognition of receipt of that email or acknowledgement of receipt of that email? Are there other things that you may also not be too attentive about? Can you please just address me on that, or the Commission rather?
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me clarify that. I was aware that the secretary had resigned, and I did indicate that. I had forwarded my judgments to her, and she advised me that she had forwarded them to the DJP to be handed down on my behalf. And that is why I then relaxed. So I was under that impression. It only came as a surprise that they never went through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I think we have come to the end of this interview. I take this opportunity to thank you, Ms. Noncembu, for availing yourself, but I wish to give you 3 minutes to emphasize whatever points you wish the commissioners to particularly bear in mind as they consider your candidature, if there are any points you want to emphasize, but if you feel you have dealt with issues adequately, that would be fine.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I think I've dealt with everything, and I do believe the commissioners, are in possession of my judgments and everything else that needs consideration. Perhaps I can just thank this commission for, inviting me and giving me the opportunity to be here and to be considered for appointment in Gqeberha.
Thank you very much. You are now excused.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you.